Oftentimes when you're knocking doors, sometimes you'll get asked, oh, what church do you go to? And I would simply reply, I don't go to church, but I do believe in transparency, accountability, responsiveness. Here's my cell phone number. If you ever have any issue with a pothole or, a international issue, let me know. I can connect you to our federal delegation or city council, or if it's a state issue, I'd be happy to help if I win. And I've kept that going ever since 2016. I put my personal cell phone on just about all of my communications, and I've never had a prank phone call in 11 years.
Welcome to Unbound, conversations about what happens when the version of you that made you successful is no longer enough. I'm Lori Darley, and I work with high performers, athletes, executives, creators who are facing the question, who am I when I'm not that anymore? Because success doesn't prepare you for what comes next. Today's conversation is about discovering who you are beyond what you do. Welcome, everyone. My guest today has been a college football player, an Olympic bobsledder, a public school teacher, and a state lawmaker. 4 lives, 1 person. Mickey Dollens flipped a seat in the state legislature of Oklahoma, and he has held it for 11 years by refusing to be anyone but himself. He wrote a book about how ordinary people take back power. And underneath all of it runs a story about loss and what a person does with it. We're here for the part most people don't show you, the messy middle, the moment the crowd goes quiet and you have to ask, if I'm not that anymore, who am I? Mickey Dollens has answered that question more than once, so let's find out how. Mickey, welcome to Unbound.
Lori, thank you so much for having me on the show, and that was a wonderful introduction.
Well, you're a wonderful person to have on the cast, so I'm excited for our conversation. And I'd like to share, before we start, I'd like to share something important with our audience so they can prepare for our exchange. This conversation touches on suicide and the loss of a family member. And so if you're somewhere public or it's not the right moment, come back to it when you're ready. We'll treat the conversation with the care it deserves. So, Mickey, you have led 4 very different lives, and you've reinvented yourself from football to Olympics, to the Olympic bobsledding, a public school teacher, and a state legislature. When someone asks you today who you are, what do you say?
That's a great question. The first thing that came to my mind when you just asked me that is I'm a father, first and foremost. My kids start first grade tomorrow, 3rd grade, and they're the light of my life. But professionally, at this moment in time, I'd say I'm a state lawmaker. I'm an advocate for state church separation, for rights for everyday people to affect change at the grassroots level. That's what really inspires me to wake up each morning and get to work to try to make a difference.
Beautiful. You know, with all of those previous roles that you filled and where you have landed for these past 11 seasons, I'll call them, is there a common thread that has moved through all of those personas that you could name or describe for us?
I talk to a lot of younger people at schools and typically high school, sometimes college. And there's a lot of people who have no idea what they want to do next or what they're even going to do tomorrow. And my advice to them is that's perfectly normal and that's perfectly fine. Just keep moving forward. If you can find what it is that you're excited about, you get passionate about, maybe it's an advocacy issue, maybe it's the dream job, find out what that is and then start reverse engineering it backwards. What's the next step you can do? And oftentimes along the ways, it's not always going to work out exactly like what you wanted, but by taking that proactive initiative, you're going to create opportunities that open doors that lead to pathways you may never have imagined. I know we'll get into a little bit of my story, but I believe I have some perfect examples that give credit to that.
Yeah. And I can hear the coach in you already, the one who is sort of creating a vision for what is possible. Can you give us, though, a brief overview of where you grew up? What was that like? And just a little bit about yourself.
I'd love to. I'm a fifth generation Oklahoman. My great grandfather, my grandfather, and my dad all worked for Phillips 66 from the day they started work till they retired. My dad was the first to go from the fields to the office. My mom is a occupational therapist in her 46th year, helping elderly people regain their independence. And so from a very young age, I was always taught the lessons in hard work and looking after others, especially the vulnerable, the underdogs. And so I grew up in Northeast Oklahoma in a oil town called Bartlesville. And growing up, my number one goal, the one thing I knew I wanted to do was earn a Division I football scholarship. But our football team was terrible. My senior year, we only won one game. Immediately after our last game, head coach was fired. And I went into the locker room the next Monday after our Friday game. And I was looking for my game film from my sophomore year to my senior year. There was no coaches around. I had to go into the video room and take all my VHS game film from the years past, minus my last game that never made it to the film. And I just started creating highlight reels of every game that I'd played in since a sophomore, and just started sending them out to colleges all around Oklahoma. And I went from zero college interest to my first Division I scholarship in about 2 months. And then that opened the door for many more scholarships. I ended up with 4 total, but I chose
Wow.
Southern Methodist University in Dallas. It was far enough away to not be in Oklahoma, but it was close enough where I could still come back and see family. And that was huge eye
Oh,
opener
well,
for me. The perspective
well,
from going small town Oklahoma to Dallas was exactly what I needed in more
yeah,
ways than
but
one.
yes, but and also look at who authored that, who caused that to happen. Was rummaging around in those VHS tapes and creating kind of a reel, old-fashioned reel as it was. I remember pre-VHS. Do you? And so we have two common data points besides both being SMUers. I also went to a school. It wasn't a high school. Northwestern University had a pretty lousy football team as well back in the day when I was there. So anyway, we have, I'm sure, hopefully more positive things in common as well. But so what happened? So you had all these scholarships, and can you break that down a little bit more?
Well, I think it's important for people to remember that in life, you have to take initiative. Sometimes you have to take proactive initiative. And whether that's walking into the deserted coach's locker room and getting your game film, it really takes a vision, but someone who understands that no one's just going to do it for you. I remember the first example that I felt this when I was probably 6 or 7 years old. I got up on a early Saturday morning. I went into the kitchen. I cooked myself up some Jimmy Dean's breakfast sausage sandwiches, and I sat down on the couch and turned on the TV, got covered up, and I was enjoying my favorite show, just living life. And I finished my breakfast. The show ended, and this new show came on, and I was not a fan. I didn't care for the new show, but I was so comfortable under the blanket, and I was like, I'm just going to sit here and watch this show I don't like. And then about 5 minutes into the show, I thought to myself, no, this isn't worth it. If I don't like the show on TV, I need to change the channel. So I started looking for the remote, and then I spotted the remote across the room. And again, I was like, I don't want to get out from underneath my warm covers and walk all the way
Mhm.
over there and grab the remote. But eventually I'm like, if I want to change the channel, I have to get uncomfortable. So I got up, I went and got the remote, came back and sat down, and I turned it on to a channel that I like. And I know it seems kind of trivial, but that really taught me a lesson afterward that if you don't like the channel you're looking at, you always have the power to get up and do something about it. And so
Mm.
I've just taken that little
It's a
anecdote
great story.
and then
Yeah, and
eh,
I love having to climb out from underneath that warm blanket and the discomfort that that causes, and it's just so much easier and safer to stay inside.
That's right. There's an old saying that says, ships would be safest in the harbor, but that's not what they're built to do. So sometimes you have to take that risk and go out
Yeah.
there and face the uncertainty, face the dangerous elements. But ultimately, that's the only way to get anything that you want out of life. And if you sit at the dock for too long, you're going to find out that time has expired. You get barnacles under you. Different things like that are going to hold you back either way. So might as well take the initiative, take the risk, and take that first step forward of getting out into the sea.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So here we are, and you are, your last college game. Can you take me there? Your brother was there, I believe, as I recall your story.
Yeah, my brother Joe, he was 5 years younger than me, and he was very artistic, musically talented, but he loved to watch me play sports. So he would come to my games, and the last game I played was against Army. There's the game ball up there, but we had just finished playing Army in the Armed Forces Bowl, lost that game, and I was fine with that. I had played college football, I achieved my dream. I was ready to get out into the private sector. And unfortunately, just about a month after my last game, my younger brother died by suicide. And I was faced with a ton of emotional energy that could have gone one way or the other. And I prioritized my brother Joe and thought about what he would have wanted. And at that time, I know he had been talking about wanting to watch me try out for the NFL. And at the time when he was alive, I said, nah, I don't really have any interest in that. But I kept thinking about how that's what he wanted me to do. And so I thought, at this point in time, I need to channel this emotional energy into something productive. And I'm missing my teammates. I was missing that locker room camaraderie, channeling my energy into like workouts. And so from that day, I just decided I was going to do everything I could for the next 3 months to prepare for the 2011 NFL Pro Day. And I gave it my all. I went and performed in the NFL Combine, not as a defensive end, which I played in college, but as a linebacker. So I dropped some weight. I got even stronger and faster, and I performed really well in the pro day, but to no one's surprise, did not get drafted, never played linebacker. And I felt better about doing it. I had some really great breakthroughs working out with friends and channeling that energy into something positive. Well, lo and behold, just a couple weeks after the NFL Pro Day, I got a call from the United States Olympic bobsledding team that said they saw my Pro Day combine results and offered me an opportunity to try out for the Team USA. And I said, I'm in Texas. Where am I going to bobsled? I'm from Oklahoma. And they're like, well, have you seen Cool Runnings? I'm like, yeah, a long time ago. I don't remember anything. And they're like, it's just like that. And I said, well, where do I try out? And they said, come up to Lake Placid, New York, upstate New York. And so I took a flight up there and I did another tryout and I ended up making it. So I was on a 4-man bobsled team as a second pusher. And I got to travel around the world and meet new people and compete against athletes from all around the world. And a lot like going from small town Oklahoma to Dallas, Texas, how that opened my perspectives. Going from the United States to Europe and Canada for the first time in my life and meeting those people and taking those experiences back home really transformed my life for the better. And it helped me
Wow.
mourn the loss of my brother. And after a few years with having the camaraderie, having the energy outlets, having something to aspire toward was exactly what I needed to help myself get over the loss of my brother and memorialize him in something worthwhile.
Yeah, there's so much there between the grief that you were channeling into the positive energy, but also sort of this mad tumble forward in a very compressed period of time where you wake up one day and you're an aspiring NFL player, and then however long a month later you're now on the bobsled team. What was that like inside of you? Did you feel like you were getting yanked around? What was your was your internal thought about that? Did you kind of like say, "Wow, this is amazing," or like, "Who the hell am I?" Or what was your relationship to that dramatic of a change?
No one's ever asked me that question before. And now that I think about it, it'd be easy to say, oh, it was so fun. And I just, went for it. But also at the time, you're thinking, well, I'm a college graduate. Like, I need to get out into the real world. And am I still going to have that job offer on the drilling rig that I had? And so I had to weigh a lot of pros and cons about doing this. But I mean, thankfully, I had the support of my family and the oil company who offered me the job as a roughneck in Oklahoma.
Okay.
I explained the situation. They knew about my brother, and the owner of the company told me to take it as far as I could with my Olympic dream. And so, a lot of people's success is determined on their own initiative and what they put into it, but also so much of it is about the support you have around you. My
Okay.
family, who was supporting me at the time, my future boss had told me I could do this and I'd still have a job waiting for me in Oklahoma after I pursued the Olympic dreams. And so those reassurances gave me confidence to put everything I had into something that I felt like wasn't going to take my life off track. And so I would say that while you pursue a dream, while you pivot into a new career transition, be calculated and take measured risk so that
Mhm.
you're still meeting your responsibilities. And now I have children, but at the time I didn't. So it was just me. But still, anything I do, whether it be political or career wise, is very calculated, and a lot of thought goes into it.
Well, I'm curious about so your family was supporting you. You've talked about the support of from the oil rig company. And I'm curious, what do you think they saw in you that you didn't even recognize? Was there something in you that other people saw that you were not aware of yet? Or were you only just was only beginning to emerge in your awareness that, wow, I have this capacity or that capacity? Anything
Youth.
that comes up about that?
Yeah,
What
they
was that?
saw youth. They I tell young people all the time they have a big advantage because established older professionals love to see ambition in youth. And so anytime a high schooler goes up to a successful person and says, I would love for you to be my mentor. I've got an idea for a business. Could you help me? They love to see that. And so
Mhm.
I did have a lot of support just because of how young I was. I was 22, 23 years old, going for an Olympic dream. People like to see that. As you get older, there's less of that. And so I really encourage young people to take every opportunity they can to leverage their youth to open up new opportunities for them and connect with people who are looking to give back, because established professionals who are successful in their field have had many ups and downs and have learned a lot, and they would probably, most of them, love to share what got them to that position, and not so much with a peer their own age or someone who's older, but the future generations, the young
Yes.
people. And
Yes.
that's why we love having interns at the Capitol, and we have the PAGE program where kids in high school can, be on the House floor and watch debate and see how laws are made. And we love answering their questions and interacting with them. So, yeah, definitely, youth was on my side, and that helped a lot.
And when did you start to appreciate youth?
I don't know when the opportunities start drying up. I'm kidding. Um, I'm 38 now, so I wouldn't consider myself youth, but
I
it,
would.
at that time, it's just, I guess, suppose you're right. At any age, people like to see someone who's striving for a goal and
Mhm.
and who's trying to do good by everyone in the pursuit of that goal. And you see it within political candidates who have a message, that meets the moment.
Yeah.
They naturally and organically get elevated because they're resonating with something that's deep inside someone, and that is hope for a better future. And so whether that person is aspiring toward a hope and a better future for themselves, their family, their community, state, or country, you're going to have people that naturally coalesce around them to help them achieve those goals.
Hmm.
And I would hope that young people take advantage of that.
Yes. So I would sort of assume that when you spent time in the school system, that you began, the question behind this is as you moved from one role to another, from one life and one, sort of way of operating, from being someone who's highly goal oriented, but then also having a widening awareness of the world around you and the commonality of the human experience. I mean, I could go on, but did it get easier to reinvent yourself, or did it become more challenging?
Hmm. There's always challenges. I will say that, so just to kind of continue on my story, I graduated SMU with a degree in English, played my last game, brother passed away, tried out for the Olympic team, bobsledding team USA, made it, and then competed for a few years. And then in 2014, I came back to Oklahoma, and I went to my future employer and I said, okay, I'm ready to get to work. And he said, okay, well, oil's not doing so great right now, but we're still drilling in this city and this town. And so I went out and roughnecked all over Oklahoma. We were on an old rig where we used to throw chains and make manual connections and, hard labor. But
Holy
the people on
smokes.
my rig were awesome. And, we're all making good money. Everyone's happy. And then about a year and a half into it, oil went bust like it does. It's a cyclical industry.
Sure.
And so, myself, I had an English degree from a great university. And so I immediately found employment as a high school English teacher in South Oklahoma City. Unfortunately, the same could not be said for my colleagues on the rig. They went from making nearly $100,000 to some of them $7.25 or just a little
Mm,
more, which is the minimum
mm,
wage in Oklahoma.
mm.
And I didn't know the term for it at the time, but that is due to Oklahoma's lack of economic diversification, especially at the time. There was no investment in green energy or wind farms like we have now. And so my friends on the rig, they went to just basically trying to survive until the next oil boom. For
Mm.
me, I went to work in the classroom and started coaching, as you alluded to earlier. And I
Yes.
liked it so much that I had used some of the money that I saved up and also some support from my family to buy my first house right down the street from the high school that I was teaching at. And I was ready for that to be my career. And then, unfortunately, just a year and a half later, the lack of oil revenue caught up with government core services, and it caused our schools to close down to 4-day school weeks. A handful of
Wow.
schools
What a
did across the
change.
state, and
Wow.
over 800 newly hired teachers in Oklahoma were laid off due to lack of funding. This is in
Wow.
2015.
I was about to ask you 2015. I would not that long ago.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I remember my principal had called me into his office, and he told me that the first time in his career as an administrator, he's never had to let teachers go due to lack of funding. And he told me that they likely would not have the funds to hire me and 8 other teachers at US Grand High School back the next year.
Mm,
And so I started thinking, what is going on here? In
mhm.
Oklahoma, my parents had tried to talk to the state to get some beds, to get a bed for my brother. There was a hold, told him to wait. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. I started looking at the jobs for people like my friends on the rig who only had one option. That was oil and gas. I started looking at what was going on in our education system, the lack of teachers, schools getting shut down because they couldn't keep the AC and light bill on. And so I looked up who my representative was, and I looked at their voting record, and it was the opposite of everything that I thought would have prevented those cases from happening. And
Mm,
so on a whim, I decided that I would start talking to my neighbors and running on a platform of mental health, economic diversification, better jobs, and improved public education. And I did that for 5 months and ended up flipping a seat in Deep Red, Oklahoma back in 2016. And I've won 6 elections ever since.
That alone is an incredible story. And the part, though, that where you were an openly agnostic candidate without faking your faith or a faith, what did that cost you and what did it give you?
That's an interesting question because oftentimes when you're knocking doors, sometimes you'll get asked, "Oh, what church do you go to?" And I would simply reply, I don't go to church, but I do believe in transparency, accountability, responsiveness. Here's my cell phone number. If you ever have any issue with a pothole or, a international issue, let me know. I can connect you to our federal delegation, our city council, or if it's a state issue, I'd be happy to help if I win. And I've kept that going ever since 2016. I put my personal cell phone on just about all of my communications, and I've never had a prank phone call in 11 years.
Whoa.
So, knock on wood. It's just a testament to people are less concerned about what you're doing Sunday morning and more worried about how hard you're going to work for them when it comes to getting their issues heard at the Capitol or getting that stop sign replaced or um, addressing major issues like public education, healthcare, affordability, innovative housing solutions, pet
Yeah.
protection, those type of things are where my values lie.
There was something that you shared on our first call together that always stuck with me, and that was how you remarked about the people, your constituents, and just all the folks that were in your domain, that they would absolutely comment on, and to be able to hear the conviction in your voice when you spoke about those things. And it's obviously something that was incredibly resonant, and that they became very, very, I'll say, convinced that you were going to be a man of your word, and that's a pretty big deal. Am
I
I
always, yeah,
in the park?
I
Ballpark?
always encourage candidates to run authentically. If you don't, it's going to show through. If you're not running authentically, you're going to be nervous to get up in front of a crowd and speak. But if you're running for purposes that you have conviction in, for values that you want to uphold, constitutional values such as the principle of the separation of church and state, making sure that everyone of minority religions and those of none at all are treated the same as everyone else in our pluralistic society, where everyone has an opportunity to reach their highest potential. But the current policies are making that more and more difficult every day, every month and year. Then people can pick up on that and it will resonate. And so, whatever your faith is, or none at all, just run authentically and talk about your values and listen to the people because that's the number one important thing is because they will give you so much insight into what's happening in neighborhoods all around your district.
Well, this is a bit of a vulnerable toss to your uh, for you to answer. Was there any time that you were tempted to fake it?
Mm, nope, I've never felt that pressure before. Um, Even in the House of Representatives, it's just I guess it's likely because I'm not in a position of power being in the minority caucus.
Right.
My most effective advocacy comes from taking the microphone and elevating the voices of my constituents. And that means oftentimes not getting a lot of your legislation heard, much less
Hmm.
passed.
Yeah.
And so I'm happy with my role in the caucus of being that dissenting voice on terrible policy that could harm people's lives and make opportunity harder to reach and attain. And so thankfully, I've never felt the pressure to have to fake it. I will
Yeah.
say that this is me as an established professional who I feel comfortable in my position, but I have been in positions growing up, especially in athletics, where I felt the power of religious coercion in a play to play type of sense, where
Yeah.
you're not all in, then you're not a team player. And all in
Yeah.
means going to chapel before games. It means when coach calls on you, you stand up and you give that pregame prayer. And I have done
Hmm.
that. And I've
Yeah.
seen friends and teammates who did not share the same faith as the coach get up and proclaim that as well. Because when you're in a situation where one person has all the authority over your playing time, over your
Yep.
scholarship, and nowadays millions of dollars with NIL money, you're going to be coerced.
Gosh.
And
Yeah.
it doesn't
Yeah.
matter if it's a college football coach, a high school football coach, or an elected official with
Yeah.
authority. Anytime
Yeah.
someone with that power dynamic starts taking their convictions and forcing it onto everyone else is when I have a real problem.
Yeah. I hear you. Um, uh, Mickey, you know my husband, and you know that he was the only Jewish boy that grew up in Palestine, Texas. So there's a lot of commonality in terms of, when you're the only one, when you're able as a young person to speak truth to power, that's a pretty amazing thing. He wasn't necessarily speaking truth to power. He was being very charming and finding ways to kind of change the subject. But um, thank you for sharing that, because I think that there are listeners out there who might be, hearing that they're one of those folks that can't speak truth to power and they're not able to be feel included, and so that's where we are. So what's next? The transition you're living in now. Your term limits. You're term limited in 2028. What do you think? Who are you becoming next?
You know, first and foremost, want to be there for my kids and support all that they're doing in school and in extracurricular activities. They love jujitsu, t-ball, ballet. They do it all. So first and foremost, father is number one priority. I'm engaged, getting married October 2nd of 27. So we're really, my fiance Chelsea and I are really happy about that. And
Congratulations.
I do term out in November of 2028. So it's still about 2.5 years. But whatever I decide to do, it's definitely going to be in something that's rooted in values and standing up for the vulnerable people, making sure that everyone is created equal and that those in power follow the Constitution.
Thank you. And you wrote a book about ordinary people reclaiming power. You want to share that with the
Thank you.
audience?
Yeah, my book was published in 2024. It is called The Citizen's Guide to Political Change: How to Win with Ballot Initiatives and Defend Direct Democracy. Um, Oklahoma is one of 26 states that has the power of the citizen-led ballot initiative. It was incorporated into our original Constitution in 1907. It's a progressive era policy that was created to hold politicians accountable and give everyday people the power to affect laws without having to rely on the legislature to do so. And so in Oklahoma, this has been very effective over the past 5 to 6 years when the people collected signatures and passed medical marijuana. They collected signatures and passed criminal justice reform. They collected signatures and passed Medicaid expansion that the Oklahoma legislature had punted for 10 years. After Medicaid expansion passed, now 260,000 Oklahomans have health insurance who otherwise wouldn't. After this happened, the legislature started getting pretty angry and started creating these obstacles for ordinary people to be able to collect signatures and affect change at the grassroots level. And it's been attacked, not just in Oklahoma, but in many of the states that have this form of direct democracy. And so I decided to write a book, um, basically recording this history, and many of my debates and how we got here, and then an action plan, a step-by-step action plan on how other people in states where this is happening can protect the integrity of the ballot initiative process.
Wow. You have brought so much education and awareness in this very short period of time. 33 minutes we've been recording. And there's so many things that I'm um, going to be adding to my own list of ways to engage in a process that needs my voice, your voice, and all of our voices. So for the athlete, for the high performer, for the founder who is listening in and kind of stuck in that messy middle, they don't really know who they are. They have a sense of grief as well, in terms of, thinking about not being able to have that experience with their teammates and practice together and socialize together. What would you want them to know based on what you said here, or just anything new? What would you want to share with them?
Anytime someone feels stuck or like they don't know what their next step is, my advice is to move. And by move, I mean, get physical, get active. Maybe that's mountain biking. Maybe that's hiking. Maybe that's an organized HIIT workout. Maybe you're into CrossFit. Maybe you're into yoga. Just get the blood flowing because it's going to release endorphins. It's going to spark new ideas. It's going to get oxygen in your brain. And once you start a habit of that, then you'll want to bring like something like this, like a legal pad with you or something to write down with, even your phone. So when you are involved in these workouts and you're getting the blood going and you're feeling the good feeling hormones and all of that, you can take the ideas that will come to you and write them down at night. When you wake up and you have an idea, write it down, journal. When you can get your thoughts onto the page, your life is going to you're going to gain more clarity. And so move. And then your subconscious will already know what you're trying to solve, and then the ideas will start flashing. But I think people get stuck when they literally stop moving. They're going to figuratively get stuck when they stop moving. So just
Yeah.
keep
Yeah.
moving, keep your exercise. I've always worked out. I've always been in athletics, but if I go more than 4 or 5 days without working out or getting a sweat, I feel stuck. And so it happens to everyone.
Yeah,
And
it
so
really
that's my
does.
best advice. And even if you're not athletic, you're still going to benefit from a jog, a walk,
Yeah. Or
eating
dancing.
right, dancing. Oh my gosh. Yeah,
Dancing.
that's huge.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Have
I
you found
actually,
some breakthroughs have come while you're in the
oh
zone
my
when you're
gosh,
dancing?
yes. I mean, if I don't dance, I mean, dance for me is my access to what I would call my divine self. And I also run. And so on my run yesterday, I actually dictated my whole I did a solo podcast that I think is going to probably air on Friday. And it's all about, move a muscle, change a thought. And it's, I think, our relationship to our thoughts is we think that they are who we are, and they're just thoughts, right? And we think that they define us, and oftentimes they keep us stuck in a cage. So I so appreciate your time. And if I may just give a little short commercial here, here at Unbound, we have many opportunities to engage. We have the Unbound Identity Lab, which is a 6-month uh, self-guided virtual curriculum where you go out and do stuff that stretches you, and you reflect. It's not about doing the thing. It's actually about how you think about yourself as you're doing it. It's like who you're being as you actually do that. Like if you're doing it with regret or fear or whatever, you start to notice that there's some patterns. We also have your second life, which is a deeper dive program. We call it the intensive. And it is 8 weeks of deep self-reflection and also embodied experience to help things come to life. And also, if you have a story to tell about your messy middle, we'd love to hear from you here at Unbound Winners for Life. And so with that, Mickey, it is my extraordinary pleasure and with deep gratitude, I say thank you for being here with us today. And everybody watch out for this amazing podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. Thank
Thank you
you.
for having me, Lori.
Yeah, you bet. Take care. Sometimes growth means creating a completely new game plan for your life. So, if something in this conversation resonated with you, I invite you to open the Unbound Compass, a map designed to help you see where you are, what's shifting, and where you may be ready to expand next. Your old game plan got you here successfully, and the Unbound Compass helps you discover what comes next. It only takes about 5 minutes. And as always, thank you for joining us, and I hope to talk with you soon.